TÜV Süd all over the world. I developed projects, and I have developed this methodology. You will see in the history when it starts. It's quite early, and now this is a main upgrade of our methodology, and I'm also excited how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Moritz and Hubert. And likewise, we're really excited to have you on board and work. And like I said before, it's been a pleasure working with you, and looking forward to your presentation later. So a little bit about ICR. ICR is a greenhouse gas program endorsed by ICROA or approved by ICROA. We have around 150 plus projects, 10 methodologies somewhere in the approval process, ranging different technologies, working with numerous VVPs and product developers and connectivity to different market mechanisms. About the ICR requirements, just how the governance and the structure of the program. We rely heavily on ISO 14064 series of standards, which you probably are all familiar with, and you can see it in the name of the methodology, referencing the ISO 14064-2. But like for the context, ISO brings down the core structure for our carbon project development, but does not function as a carbon market standard. For that, we complement the ISO 14064-2 standard with the ICR requirement document, which addresses the missing carbon markets elements, such as eligibility, like for example, start date, safeguards and SDGs, additionality, permanence, double counting, claiming, Article 6.2, readiness, and clarity. For demonstration of conformity at the project level, project need to adhere to methodological criteria and procedures, which come from approved methodologies, ICR methodologies, other methodologies from other programs, or establishment of criteria and procedures within the project documentation. We, of course, rely on the fundamental principles of carbon accounting at the project level, which relates to relevance, completeness, consistency, accuracy, transparency, and conservativeness. The methodology approval process comprises of, just in simple terms, adherence to the ISO 14064-2 at the methodological level, ICR requirements, first the ICR methodology requirements, and then the process, relating then to the ICR requirement document, which is the project level requirements. All methodologies need to undergo validation by an approved VVP and go through public consultation, which the methodology started in late October, and now we are at the final sprint of the public consultation, which closes in the end of November. And after public consultation, it undergoes a review and final approval. What is a methodology? But a methodology just outlines criteria and procedures on how to measure, calculate greenhouse gas emission reduction, removals, or enhancements for specific activities or projects. Defines the approach to determine the baseline, monitor emission reduction and removals, and report on its impacts. So the methodologies are, as you all know, most of you know, that it includes scope, applicability conditions, some references to normative references, definitions that are applicable to the methodology, and then it comes to the baseline of the project scenario, identification, additionality, boundary, quantification, and monitoring, and addressing that it results in real, measurable, additional initial reductions or removals, where leakage is avoided. It defines and safeguards permanence. So the governance of the methodologies, or like I said before, it's the methodology. So if we look at the boxes here, we have the requirements that are ICR methodology requirements and the ISO, and then the terms and conditions. Then we have the procedures that comes from the ICR methodology approval process, and then supported by ICR definitions. All methodologies, they need to follow like consistent templates that we provide, but we also have something exciting to share with you at the end. So the methodology process in process flow looks something like that. Submission of a concept note, which is optional. Our review of that concept note, the submission. Then it's the methodology development, the validation of that methodology, and or starting with the public consultation. Sometimes this is mixed up. Sometimes the public consultation is completed prior to the validation. Then finally the ICR review, addressing some quality issues and consistency and completeness, followed by the ICR board approval. In parallel to the process is the implementation of a project, then to see how the project is, how the methodology functions at the project level. So then it's a validation of the project, followed by ICR review at the project level. Just for the not going to go through this slide in any great details, but on the left is the sections of the approval process document, which is in version 3 now. It's like explaining the steps as I went through on the process flow from concept note to this final approval, and then some other governance issues such as periodic review of approved methodologies and review procedures. The methodology requirements, we did a minor update on the methodology requirements, and now it's in version 3.1. During our last public consultation at the program, where we were addressing some minor changes that our stakeholders felt that needed to be revised. And those are related at the methodology level mainly to introduction of dynamic baseline settings, which are encouraged, and introduction of permanence terms. Then for the methodology description template, we have been relying on these Word templates that you are familiar with, but we are transitioning to a digital to the digital age. Introduction of digital both project and methodology development platform, where we are capturing both the projects and methodologies in a more data-centric format, and which will make the validation and our review and much more transparent and more streamlined and efficient, we trust. But for the criteria for the validation are available here and on our documentation page, if you just scan the QR code. Now, the public consultation on the the Pina methodology, ISO 14064-2 Impact Improved Forest Management, IIFM, is ongoing and closes on the 28th of November. If you scan this QR code, you will be directed to the public consultation page, and you can submit your comments through a public consultation form informing improvement or any suggestions that you feel that are important to capture during this public consultation. And I think that concludes my presentation on the methodology approval process. So I will just hand it over to Pina now. And
perfect.
You can take the floor. Thank you.
Great. So thanks for the introduction. Can everybody see my screen fine? Great. Okay, so welcome to our methodology presentation. Maybe before we get into it, another quick look at some of the contributors. So you've already met me and Hubertus, but obviously many more people were involved in the methodology, also many more than are on this slide here, but we just wanted to highlight some people. In particular, I would like to mention Dr. Georg Erlacher and Dr. Hubert Hasenauer, who together they represent sort of on the one side the academic world. Dr. Hasenauer is head of the Silvicultural Institute at the University of Vienna, and Dr. Erlacher was CEO for a long time of the Austrian Federal Forests, the largest forest owner in Austria. And they've been crucial in connecting us to forest experts in Austria, but also in the wider German-speaking world. So there are quite a few people behind it. And with that, I would like to hand over to Andreas, who has also been closely involved in this methodology development process.
Thank you. Welcome to everybody. My name is Andreas Gabriel, and I worked on behalf of Wald-Klimaschutz Schweiz, the Swiss Forest Climate Association, and supported the methodology development. Beforehand, I was also working as project developer in this field. And during the revision, I concentrated mainly on quantitative parts of the method.
Great, thank you. Till?
Yes, thanks, Moritz. Hello, everyone. I'm Till, also happy to be here today. I have a background in informatics and business administration and started working for Pina about 3.5 years ago. And I'm mainly responsible for development and monitoring of our restructuring projects and also the continuous development of our methodologies. And through that also, of course, I've been working closely together with Moritz and Andreas and everyone named here on the IIFM methodology as well.
Excellent. So for everybody's information, Till and Andreas, they have no speaking parts, but they will be able to answer any questions. For example, if you have specific quantitative questions or more general questions around project development. All right. So maybe first to take a step back, why is this methodology needed? At Pina, we focus exclusively on Europe. You will see in the next slide which countries we're present in already. But essentially, the problem we're facing in Europe is that really retaining the level of carbon stock that we have in our forest is going to be a major challenge for the next 30 years. So the conservation of existing stock is going to become an increasing challenge. In Germany, the forest sector just turned to a net emitter for the first time. In Austria, we've had the same thing last year, and this is a long-term trend of reducing carbon stock in the European Union in the LULUCF sector. And really what we want to do with this methodology is offer forest owners a way to retain their stock and increase it where possible. And with that, we often hear about Article 6 in the carbon market bubble, but there's also Article 5, which this quote is from. And we just like to remind people that really one of the essential objectives we have in fighting climate change is taking action to conserve and enhance sinks and reservoirs, including forests. And so this is really our mission statement, to conserve and enhance forest sinks in Europe. With that, I would give over for a very brief history lesson from Hubertus, who will explain that this is actually not a new methodology, it's anything but. This is merely the latest iteration. Hubertus?
Yeah, thank you. So there were early activities in Switzerland to go for climate protection projects, and when it was decided that in the compliance market there is no option for forests, there were initiatives for the voluntary market. There were one very first project in 2007, Forest Nature Reserve, and then in 2010 one project, Oberallgemeinkooperation Schweiz, which is on 7,000 hectares, so it's not small. So this single forest owner decided to develop a methodology and to do a project, and it's still running. So, but with that project, I developed the basic concept of the methodology. And in 2019, the Forest Owners Association of Switzerland approached me to develop a project and to enable the forest owners to take part in the voluntary carbon market. And so I took the experiences of these previous projects and developed these methodology according ISO. So we put it on that ISO level. And that methodology was still quite Swiss specific. And then I opened that up in the Silviculture Forest Carbon Standard and made it applicable for temperate zones, in principle for temperate zones. And so now we see the development is going on. There are increasing requirements from international organizations, from the market, and not only in terms of methodology and not only methodology and technical issues, but also governance issues. And so it was decided to go for this ICR concept, and there we are now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, so it's been running for a while. We cover roughly 100,000 hectares in 6 countries with active projects. They're mostly located in Switzerland, in Austria, and in Germany. But we do also have a presence in Hungary, in the Czech Republic, and in Italy, specifically in northern Italy. So some of the core principles of the methodology, the first and foremost, it's really about conservativeness. So you can only ever be so accurate, and we take, as wherever it's possible, we go with the most conservative value. I know that this is a basic concept that is common in the market, but I do feel like this is really one of the guiding principles for our methodology. Then for additionality, something that we also care deeply about, which we know is an issue in forestry projects. We will give you a quick overview of how we handle this in our methodology. And of course, leakage. In particular, we're worried about internal leakage. So any forest owner who works with us, they are required to declare all the holdings that they have. So we can make sure that internally there is no leakage, and of course for external leakage we also have a process. Then for carbon pools, this is also a change that's come with this latest iteration. We really only focus on living tree biomass. Before then, there was an option to include deadwood. We decided to remove that because we specified in the methodology, we sharpened the wording around carbon pools and what the criteria are for them to be included. And with the other carbon pools you see on here, those may be positively affected by a project, but it's quite difficult to precisely attribute them to the project or to exactly measure them. So we're really only focusing on living tree biomass, where we can get an exact measurement, or at least a defined accuracy. All right, so for a quick overview, the methodology is called Impact Improved Forest Management. Why the impact? That's essentially because we're saying we don't want to do another IFM, traditional IFM methodology. One thing that we really want to focus is on the reduction of risk and the generation of impact. So reducing biotic and abiotic risks to the forest is quite crucial. And to do that, we have on the one hand, of course, the mechanism to generate additional tons of carbon, which is either a partial waiver of possible use, so less harvesting, or it is an extension of the rotation period, which leads to a stock increase. And then for risk, we have on the one hand measures to reduce natural risk. So typically that would be thinning of older stands, wildlife management, or increasing tree species diversity, and measures to increase climate resilience. I mean, those two sort of go hand in hand. And essentially what you do in the project is quite simple. You compare the stock development in the project to the assumed baseline. All right, so for crediting, we've split projects into 2 crediting periods of 15 years each. And an added permanence period of at least 10 years for a total project duration of 40 years. During a crediting period, we have typically annual, but technically they could be up to 5-year intervals, verification cycles where we do ex post verification. We also have requirements for forest owners that are not part of the methodology, but that are contractual for the use of funds generated through carbon credits. So we have quite unique and deep transparency into what happens with funds that are given to the project through the sale of carbon credits, and what measures are taken in the forest. And then at the end of a crediting period, there is a full revalidation of the project. This means the PDD must be updated, baseline must be recalculated, and the additionality has to be re-verified according to whichever requirements are in place after the end of the first crediting period. And of course, naturally, instead of going into the permanence period, forest owners can also start a second project after the end of the second crediting period. All right, so for additionality, we essentially took the ICR approach, which is a multi-level additionality, and we put this next to the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism rules for additionality, and tried to merge those two together. So we took the requirements from the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, which are fairly detailed, and applied those to the levels in ICR. So on the one hand, we have obviously the basic emissions additionality. So you need to show that there is a difference between the modeled baseline and the actual stock development. Then we have statutory additionality, which includes a legal review of all applicable laws in the jurisdiction that the project is located in. Although this can be standardized, so if you apply this to a new country, you can do a review at the national level and keep this for other projects, unless there are laws that for some reason apply to one forest owner but not to the other. Then you have lock-in risk, which is from the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. Essentially, this means that we must show that committing to an IIFM project doesn't lock in a level of emissions that could otherwise be lower in the future. And then we do a barrier analysis and a common practice analysis with a quantitative threshold and a clear procedure for how to measure this. For risk and permanence, we have a structured risk assessment tool where we look at project proponent risk, financial risk, natural risk, and social risk. So project proponent risk is about measuring the capacity of the project proponent to implement a project. So this goes to administrative capability, it goes to subject matter expertise, and it goes to performance history of the project proponent. Financial risk is about the financial sustainability of the project. So it's distinct from financial additionality. It's about investment costs, whether those are, which portion of those are covered at the beginning of the project, and whether any carbon price increase is necessary to make the project sustainable. And then natural risk is self-explanatory, I believe, and of course social risk, ensuring that there's no social harm caused by our project. The risk buffer will be between 10 and 20%. This will depend on an individual assessment based on the risk factors I just explained. And of course, ultimately, this is determined by ICR, not the project developer. And then, of course, we have risk mitigation activities, which I highlighted earlier. We require that carbon revenues are reinvested into risk mitigation activities, and we have financial documentation for this. Although this is done on a contractual basis with the forest owner and is not part of the methodology. All right, and with that, I would hand over to Hubertus again to lead us through the forestry part of the methodology.
Yeah, thank you, Moritz. Now we come a little bit closer to the forest. When I talk to people outside the forestry sector, they hesitate a lot that it's possible to do such projects. There is growth, there is mortality, there is harvest, there are different soil conditions, many tree species, and how such a complex ecosystem can be monitored is often questioned. So, and one of the big questions is also the baseline, how to determine the baseline. So for us, the baseline is the common practice in forest management. What happens on the project area without project in terms of carbon stock? Widely applied concept is stock management according yield models. Yield models determine the optimum final harvest age and optimum average standing timber volume in a forest management unit, which is called the normal stock. The model assumes an even age class distribution, and this is often not the reality. But most forest management concepts strive to get there on the long run, to strive for this normal stock. Then we have the situation of close to nature forest management concepts. We don't have species-wise forest stands. of exact age. Close to nature forest management operates with mixed uneven aged forest stands, where the yield model approach does not match the situation. But also in this situation, there are models for stock management used in practice and that are based on scientific literature. And there are situations where we have framework values for timber stock management in mountain forests, where protection function may influence the stock management beyond yield considerations. Also, in such cases, we do have science-based models for stock management. And in each project, we have to argue with a certifier which approach for the baseline determination we use and how we apply it. Next slide, please. Now I focus on this normal stock approach because this is quite common in lowlands. If the current stock is below the normal stock, there is no project possible because the striving for the normal stock is considered as common practice. If the forest operation is in balance and the average current stock is equal to the normal stock, the enhancement above the normal stock can be accounted for in a project. Enhancement of the stock. General rule is that maximum up to 20% above the normal stock can be accounted for. In very old stands, natural mortality starts, and we don't go into that for reasons of conservativeness. So normal stock and normal stock plus 20 is the room of maneuver for a project, which is very narrow and very conservative. If there is a standing timber volume above the normal stock and the reduction is the common practice, the conservation of this or part of it can be accounted for, and which is then avoidance of emission. And projects can be divided into operating classes depending on the situation. In one project, different situations may occur. Next slide, please. Exclusions. Stocks below the normal stock cannot be taken into account, neither for enhancement nor for conservation. And reforestation is also excluded from the project. This is a very specific project type, and in Europe, usually that is subject to reforest legal obligations, or it's covered by natural successions. So we are not a reforestation methodology, it's an impact improved forest management methodology. Yeah, and one other exception, damaged areas can be excluded from the project. We have large areas in Europe that are damaged by bark beetle, storm, drought, and those areas can be excluded from the project. But the forest owners, as Moritz already told, his whole forest area must be declared to avoid internal leakage. Next slide, please. This normal stock concept depends on tree species, yield, class, rotation period, but this is not stable. We have climate change, and we have to take into account that the tree species composition may change, that the growth change. In lower lands in Switzerland, we have lower yield than in previous decades. In higher parts, we have higher yield during to climate change. So, and also the management practice in terms of rotation periods may change. So we have to adapt these concepts according assumed changes due to climate change. This is quite always a big discussion with a certifier in which way we do that take into consideration, but we have to do it to be realistic. We have to individually adjust the parameters to determine the normal stock. Again, I already told that the enhancement or preservation of standing timber stock can be accounted for only in that range between normal stock plus 20%. Next slide, please. This is the graph of these two concepts. On the left side, you see a situation of a normal stock of 280 cubic meter per hectare. Then you can enhance that. And on the right side, you see that the starting volume is above that 280 normal stock. So it's no problem legally, silviculturally to reduce that timber stock. And if this is avoided, we have a conservation project. So the dark green part is the sum curve of the project. And so when you enhance the stock, you get removal credits, and if you conserve stock, you have avoidance credits up to 30 years. And as Moritz told, then there is an additional 10 years permanence or monitoring period. Next slide, please. Yeah. How can we handle these complicated ecosystem forests in terms of data? We know that this is nothing specific new in the carbon sector. Foresters, they know since long time how to measure the standing timber volume with inventories and to carry forward the standing stock from certain inventories, because we do inventories not every year. We have in Europe inventory periods of 10 to 15 years, in the mountains sometimes 20 years. And in between, the data are carried forward from inventory. I show the equation later. And in our projects, at least 2 inventories are necessary to adjust it, to adjust the data. We have uncertainties in harvest volume, in growth, especially. And so with 2 inventories, we adjust the project. Next slide, please. There may be full measurements. Usually we have terrestrial sample plot inventories or multi-phase inventory, where there is a remote sensing phase or synthetic estimators. Or there are other inventory methods, but in any case, the accuracy must be specified. And the benchmark is the sample plot inventory with a standard error of 5% on 95% confidence level. That's the benchmark. And if the standard error is larger, then we have to consider conservative deductions in the project. Next slide. Here, this basic assumption: volume at the end of the year is volume at the beginning plus growth minus mortality minus harvest. And the decisive parameters for the annual monitoring are harvest and mortality. Next slide, please. Summary: what are the project activities? It's reduced harvesting. It can be interpreted as extension of the rotation period in relation with baseline activities. So we have either stock increase or we have a waiver of stock reduction, the conservation. The duration, the crediting, the project activity lifetime is 30 years. integrating period, plus 10 years of permanence term. So the whole project is a minimum 40 years. Monitoring stock and growth from periodic inventories, and harvest and mortality are determined annually. And at least these two inventories are necessary to adjust the whole system. This is quite important. We had two projects. In one, the inventory brought a higher yield for the past 10 years, and in another case, it was a lower one. And we had to recalculate the whole project, the baseline, everything has to be recalculated then. So these periodic inventories are very necessary. And in between the inventories, we carry forward the carbon stock with these figures on harvest and mortality. The carbon credit types are, as already mentioned, removals. So we have a positive stock change versus the starting stock, and we have avoidance, that is holding a stock, versus a negative baseline. And it's the credits are exposed annually or periodically. Thank you. I would like to hand over back to ICR.
Thank you, Hubertus, and everyone else for this webinar. So let's continue into the Q&A. And as I before mentioned, there were questions already submitted to the sign-up form. Some of them have been thoroughly talked about in this webinar, so I've excluded them, but there are some here that are maybe relevant. And then don't be afraid of posting new questions, hopefully with time, since we are almost on time according to our agenda. But yeah, let's just start with the first question. What kind of feedback are you hoping to receive during the public consultation? Very broad question, but I might be aiming at you guys, Pina.
Sure. So hopefully a lot of feedback and constructive feedback. Of course, we're always interested to hear. I believe in this call are probably many people who are quite familiar with carbon markets and methodologies. Otherwise, I think you would save this hour in your day. And so we welcome any and all expert comments on aspects of the methodology. We are constantly reviewing the methodology, thinking about next steps. And so we're happy to hear any and all comments, concerns, and suggestions that you may have for whichever aspect of the methodology you feel strongly about.
Thank you. And then here's another question. There are already several methodologies for improved forest management, IIFM, under other GHG programs. Why did you choose to develop a new one? What limitations or issues did you find in the existing methodologies, and what benefits does your methodology bring over existing methodologies? Maybe, yeah. Sorry.
May I answer that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, in fact, it's not a new methodology. I showed the history, so it's long ago, and for temperate zones, for a long time we didn't have any applicable methodology. We're focusing on tropical forests, on plantations, afforestation, reforestation. Red is a typical thing for tropical forests. So when we started, there was nothing else. And in the meantime, we have 13% of the Swiss forest is under this concept, and it works very good. It's robust. We have a smallholder project with 6,000 forest owners. 6,000, because they are well organized. So it's applicable to different very applicable to different ownership situations. It's applicable to different ecological situations, from lowlands up to subalpine forests. So we have a lot of experience on this ISO level, and it works very nicely, very good. We got the projects all certified. So I think we are in a continuation, and now we lift it up on also in terms of governance on another level. So it's a continuous development, and so as I know the other methodologies, ours is better.
Obviously.
Maybe
That's why we're
maybe to add a bit to that, because there's also a question about other GHG programs in there. So part of the reason that we're bringing this also to ICR, ICR does not have its own improved forest management methodology, and ICR has really proven to be quite adaptable. So in the sense that they're very easy to work with, you can have quick feedback cycles, and our ambition is not to plop this methodology on here and leave it. The idea is this is the first step. We added new governance requirements and polished some of the edges. And now we get to do multiple iterations going forward, as we've done in the past. And so for that, it's quite crucial to work with a GHG program that is able to sustain that does not take years to certify methodologies and projects, but rather is open to a quick and collaborative effort to work in an agile mode, which is what we do at Pina. We like to do multiple iterations and improve over time. And so I think for that reason, that's also one of the reasons we chose ICR, and one of the reasons why I think it makes sense to take our own methodology, put it into a standard with the necessary governance around it, and then do, as I've mentioned, multiple iterations. And I think that's one of the benefits our methodology brings. We do not consider it fixed. It is frequently updated, and we try to do that going forward. So I think that is one thing that's unique about our methodology is you don't publish it, and every 5 years you have some updates to it. The update frequency is higher and will be higher going forward. The other one is, I think, that quite a few simplifications are possible when you work only in Europe and with professional forest owners. The requirements around data, around governance, in terms of trust, in terms of security, they're much different to what other methodologies have to consider and have to work with. And so I think that also warrants a simpler methodology, at least as concerns some of the governance aspects.
Exactly. Thank you for this, Moritz.
Just thank you for your kind words, Moritz.
Yeah,
I said that before. It's been a pleasure working with you, and have that you've chosen us here to work with.
No worries. Thank you.
So I'm going to grab at least one question here which was submitted during the panel. So here from David, does the methodology enable quantification and labeling of removals and reductions separately?
Yes, of course. The removals are quantified using a stock change approach, whereas so even in a combined project where both is possible. So on the one hand, you not only avoid harvesting, you instead you increase stock, then of course you have both, but we're able to separate those out. One sort of starts at the starting stock and goes towards stock change, and the other one uses the modern baseline.
Exactly.
I may complement that answer a little bit, because it also relates to the labeling or removals and reduction separately, but that's at the registry or the program level. So ICR, of course, approves or recognizes hybrid projects. So projects can be reductions and or removals. So a project can have a reduction profile and the removal profile, and then in the serialization or the labeling identification of each project or its mitigations, they are specifically identified as either reduction or avoidance profile or stock, or that are removal stock. So yeah, so they are distributed according to what they represent at the program level and registry level.
Okay, moving on. So why isn't a dynamic baseline scenario approach being applied, given that it is becoming more common in methodologies of established carbon standards like VM0045 under VCS? The comparison with similar forest areas allows for a more accurate reflection of what would have occurred in the baseline. So a dynamic baseline is a static.
Maybe
Maybe
I can get a few words in before you, Hubertus, if that's fine. So first of all, excellent question, and naturally we looked at this. We are trialing this approach in-house for future versions, but there are issues around applicability in European contexts. So generally we have smaller forest areas. They are located on a mountain, and it matters whether you're on the west side or on the south side or on the north or the east side. So the forest will grow differently there. And you have on the south side, there is a forest owner with one philosophy, and on the west side, there's another one with a different philosophy. So you have very heterogeneous areas overall. Then data access is a big issue. So VM45 is currently only applicable in the US. That's because the approach was modeled specifically using the American forest inventory from the American Forest Service. This data in this granularity and quality is not publicly available, at least in Austria, although we're working with the Bundesforschungsinstitut für Wald, so the how would I translate, the National Forest Research Service, I should say, on obtaining that data. So we are interested in the approach. It is not today currently we cannot replicate it at the moment in Europe, at least not at scale. It would be an individual effort, and we're looking into this, but currently it's simply not feasible. Over to you, Hubertus.
Yeah, we have aspects of a dynamic baseline. If the inventory shows different yield, for example, we have to recalculate the whole project from the start on. So there are minimum during the lifetime two occasions we consider the whole project again with the inventory results. So I mentioned it already that if there are differences to the forwarded figures, then we have to recalculate also the baseline. And And in the worst case, where when the result is that there was less sequestration than accounted for, we have to replace that from the buffer. So we have the baseline is not static over the whole project lifetime.
And it is additionally reassessed at the end of the first crediting period, where also new requirements will have to be taken into consideration. So over the project lifetime, there are multiple instances where the baseline is reassessed, but not in a dynamic way as in BM45. But the baseline, still our baseline, is not static over the entire project.
Yeah, and another reason to reassess the baseline may be the damages that occur and that were not calculated in advance. So also large area damages that occur can lead to a recalculation of the whole project. That happens then during the monitoring. If such damages happen that change the assumptions, we have to recalculate it anytime if a big event, a damage event occurs.
Thank you for this. I see that we are at time. Maybe we have time for one more question, Björn.
I think I see the last two questions, and I think we can answer them quite quickly. So if that's fine with you.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
So the one is, how often will periodic inventories have to be conducted? So as we said, at least twice per project. We did not set a specific year because some forest owners depend on national data, and they cannot influence when they cannot influence the inventory date. So what we've done is we said that inventory data may never be older than 15 years, and this guarantees at least 2 inventories throughout the project period. But of course, if we work with a more professional or larger forest owner who does inventories every 10 years, then of course that's fine. The more often, the better. And then the second question is about whether harvested timber is accounted for within harvested wood products. And we specifically decided not to do that. We've never done it because we believe that once you buy the wood, you also own the carbon. So we cannot take credit or responsibility for what happens with the wood after it leaves the forest. If it goes into a harvested wood product, then it is the legal right of the owner of that harvested wood product to also account for the carbon that's stored within the wood. So for reasons of attribution and also for legal reasons, I think we've left it out. Hubertus?
Yeah, and we are very clear. Harvest is a project emission. So for us, harvest is deducted, and that amount may be used in another concept of harvested wood products. So that is not excluded, but our project borderline is the forest edge.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you, and that demonstrates conservativeness, I would say. I think we are at time. So I just wanted to thank you, Pina and Wald-Klimaschutz. I can't pronounce it. for your
Forest Climate Association.
Yeah, thank you for your participation and for introducing the methodology here with us today. So the public consultation concludes on Friday, I believe. on November 28th. So for you, and we encourage everybody to participate in this consultation, even if you're just complementing the methodology or its approach, or if you have more any concerns, then you would like to know about them. So here you can see the consultation page and the link to the ICR methodology page. And of course, we will post this webinar on the consultation page as well. We will share these slides with you as well. So thank you all for the session today. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us and looking forward to your feedback.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.